What if everything you thought you knew about Game of Thrones was just the surface of a much darker truth? Beneath the wars and betrayals lies a hidden layer of ancient magic and forgotten prophecies that changes everything. The White Walkers weren't born of winter, they were created as weapons. Dragons didn't originate in Valyria, but in the shadowy east. And the greatest conspiracy in Westeros history isn't political, it's magical. Tonight we unravel the secret pattern George R.R. Martin has woven through his world. Connections that explain why the Starks can never leave Winterfell, what really destroyed Valyria in a single day, and how Jon Snow's true parentage was predicted thousands of years before his birth. These aren't wild speculations, but theories anchored in the forgotten corners of Martin's lore, the throwaway lines and ancient legends that reveal a world far more intricate and terrifying than it first appears. As you drift towards sleep, journey through 18 revelations that transform how you'll see the Game of Thrones, where magic and bloodlines intertwine across millennia, and where the most innocent-seeming characters may harbor the darkest secrets of all. Theory 1. Aegon's secret dream, the hidden purpose of the conquest. When Aegon Targaryen landed at the mouth of the Blackwater with his sisters and their 3 dragons, the world believed he came for crown and conquest alone. History remembers him as the ambitious lord who forged 7 quarreling kingdoms into one realm. But what if ambition was merely the surface of a deeper purpose? This theory proposes that Aegon the Conqueror was driven not just by the desire for a power, but by prophetic dragon dreams of an existential threat to humanity, a second long night that would require a unified continent to face. His conquest, therefore, was not merely for glory, but for survival. The seeds of this theory lie in fragments scattered throughout Westerosi history. Dragon dreams run in House Targaryen's blood. Daenerys the Dreamer foresaw the doom of Valyria and saved her family. Why should Aegon be any different? In his private writings, he spoke of the Song of Ice and Fire, and a threat from the frozen north that would require a Targaryen sitting the Iron Throne. Consider the peculiar restraint Aegon showed in his conquest. He did not salt the earth of his enemies' lands or exterminate opposing houses as conquerors often do. Instead, he offered generous terms, keeping the great houses intact under his rule. This suggests a man building alliances for a greater purpose, not simply satisfying bloodlust or greed. His decision to forge the Iron Throne from the swords of the vanquished was symbolic, not just of submission, but of unity. 1,000 blades, forged in dragonfire, as Varys would later describe it, a reminder that 1,000 swords now served one purpose. The wall had stood for thousands of years by Aegon's time, its original purpose fading into legend. Yet Aegon ensured the Night's Watch remained, even as their warnings of White Walkers became dismissed as children's tales. Did he know something others had forgotten? In House of the Dragon, King Viserys reveals to Rhaenyra that Aegon had dreamed of a terrible winter gusting out of the distant north that would bring the end of the world of the living. Only a Targaryen uniting the realm could stop it. This dream, called the Song of Ice and Fire, was a closely guarded royal secret passed from king to heir. When viewed through this lens, even Aegon's decision to convert to the faith of the Egg Seven takes on new meaning. Perhaps it wasn't mere political calculation, but a recognition that spiritual unity would be as necessary as political unity when facing the darkness to come. The Targaryen obsession with dragons across centuries gains new context as well. If Aegon foresaw ice demons that could only be defeated with fire, the family's desperate attempts to maintain dragons, even as they grew smaller and sickly, becomes a matter of survival, not vanity. Later Targaryens, especially Rhaegar, seemed driven by similar prophetic visions. Rhaegar's apparent kidnapping of Lyanna Stark may have been motivated by his belief in a prophecy about the prince that was promised, who would have the blood of both ice, Stark, and fire, Targaryen. If this theory holds true, the entire history of Westeros following the conquest takes on a new dimension. Every Targaryen who sat the Iron Throne wasn't just ruling a kingdom. They were guardians of a terrible secret, preparing for a war beyond imagining. A war that would require dragon and direwolf, wildling and southern lord to stand together against the gathering dark. Even Daenerys Targaryen's journey in the east, seemingly far removed from Westeros politics, could be viewed as the unconscious fulfillment of ancient prophecy, the return of dragons to the world at the very moment they would be needed most. Thus, Aegon's conquest was not simply the beginning of a dynasty, but the first move in a generations-long game of survival against an enemy most had forgotten. The Game of Thrones itself, the endless political machinations, may have been the greatest threat to humanity all along, distracting from the true purpose of the Seven Kingdoms unification. Theory 2. The Great Empire of the Dawn and the Long Night. Far to the east, beyond the free cities, beyond the Dothraki Sea and the Red Waste, lies Yiti, a land of jade, amber, and ancient wisdom. Among its oldest legends is the tale of a paradise lost, the great empire of the dawn. This sprawling civilization of god-emperors and golden palaces ruled when mankind was young. And its fall, this theory suggests, triggered the cataclysm known in Westeros as the Long Night. According to Yitai's ancient scrolls, the great empire flourished for 10,000 years under emperors who bore gem-like names: the Pearl Emperor, the Jade Emperor, the Tourmaline Emperor, the Onyx Emperor, the Topaz Emperor, and the Opal Emperor. After them came the Amethyst Empress, whose reign was cut brutally short. Her brother, consumed by envy and dark ambition, murdered her and took her throne, declaring himself the Bloodstone Emperor. His reign marked the beginning of a terrible darkness. He practiced dark arts, enslaved his people, and took a tiger woman for his bride. Most damningly, he cast down the true gods of Yi Tai and raised up a black stone that had fallen from the sky. This act, known as the Blood Betrayal, is said to have brought the long night upon the world. The sun hid its face for a generation, and darkness fell across the lands. What began as a usurpation in a distant eastern land became a global catastrophe. The world of ice and fire tells us, in the annals of the further east, it was the blood betrayal, as his usurpation is named, that ushered in the age of darkness called the Long Night. This is not presented as myth, but as historical fact, a connection between the Eastern Emperor's sin and the darkness that nearly consumed the world. Consider the parallels between Eastern and Western accounts of the Long Night. In Westeros, tales speak of a night that lasted a generation, when kings froze in their castles and mothers smothered their babies rather than see them starve. In Yitai, they say the sun hid its face in shame until a woman with a monkey's tail brought back the dawn. Both cultures remember a time when darkness covered the world, and both recall heroes who ended it. In Westeros, it was the last hero, or Azor Ahai. In Yitai, it was a woman of the Fisher Queens or a man with a tiger's skin. Different names, but the same cataclysm, a night that almost ended humanity. What was this black stone the Bloodstone Emperor worshipped? Some theorists connect it to the oily black stone found throughout the world, at the base of the High Tower in Old Town, in the Sea Stone Chair of the Iron Islands, and most prominently in Ashai, where the entire city is built from it. This stone, greasy and unpleasant to touch, seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. Could it be fragments of the same meteor that the Bloodstone Emperor raised as an idol? The timing suggests a catastrophic impact event, a falling star that triggered global darkness through ash and debris in the atmosphere. But the magical nature of Martin's world hints at something more sinister. Perhaps the meteor brought something with it, a malevolent force or entity that corrupted the Bloodstone Emperor and later manifested as the Others in the far north. Consider the descriptions of the Others in the books. Pale as milk with eyes, like blue stars. Compare this to the description of the woman whom the Night's King, the legendary 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, took as bride. Her skin was pale as the moon, and her eyes were like blue stars. The connection is unmistakable. If the great empire of the dawn was real, its influence may have spread far beyond Yiti. The purple eyes and silver gold hair of the Valyrians echo the Gemstone Emperor's descriptions. The ancient fortress of battle, Isle beneath the high tower in Old Town, suggests a Far Eastern architectural influence. Even the Iron Islands legends of the Grey King, who slew a sea dragon, may be distorted memories of Eastern origins. Most tantalizing is the possibility that House Dane of Starfall, with their violet eyes and pale hair, might be descendants of refugees from the Great Empire. Their ancestral sword, Dawn, forged from the heart of a fallen star, could be connected to the meteor that the Bloodstone Emperor worshipped. This theory reframes the coming conflict with the Others not as a random magical threat, but as the continuation of an ancient cosmic struggle. The darkness that began with the blood betrayal thousands of years ago is returning to complete what it started. The battle between R'hllor's fire and the Great Other's ice may be the final act in a drama that began with the fall of the Great Empire of the Dawn. Theory 3. The Children's Curse, creating the first White Walker. When the first men crossed the Arm of Dawn thousands of years ago, they found a Westeros already inhabited. The children of the forest had lived in harmony with the land for countless millennia. What followed was war, the first men with bronze and fire, the children with weirwood and obsidian. This theory posits that in their desperation, the children performed a terrible ritual. They took a captured first man, bound him to a weirwood tree, and drove a dragonglass dagger into his heart. His eyes turned the blue of deep ice, and the first White Walker, perhaps the Night King himself, was born. The evidence for this theory comes from Bran's visions through the Weirwood network. Through Greensight, he witnessed this ancient scene. A man bound to a weirwood while a child of the forest, Leaf, drove obsidian into his chest, transforming him into an ice-pale figure with sapphire eyes. When Bran later confronted Leaf about this vision, her response was telling, "We were at war. We were being slaughtered. Our sacred trees were being cut down. We needed to defend ourselves." The children had created the White Walkers as weapons against humanity, a desperate measure by a dying race. Consider what this means. The Others were never a natural part of the world. They were a weapon that turned on its creators, a curse born of desperation that grew beyond control. The ritual itself reveals much about the nature of the Others. The use of dragonglass, frozen fire, to create creatures of ice is paradoxical, suggesting a complex magical balance. The weirwood tree, as the site of transformation, connects the White Walkers to the old gods and the Greenseer's magic. The White Walkers may be perversions of the very magic that the children used to protect the forests. The timing of this creation aligns with what we know of the historical peace between the first men and the children. After generations of war, they suddenly forged the pact at the Isle of Faces. Why would the children agree to peace when they were losing? Perhaps because they had created a weapon so terrible that it threatened both sides equally. We know the Long Night came after the pact during the Age of Heroes. This suggests the White Walkers had already broken free of the children's control by then. Having been created to destroy humans, they continued their purpose beyond their creators' intentions. The symbolism in White Walker patterns offers further evidence. The spiral formations they create with corpses mirror the stone formations around. The weirwood where the first White Walker was created. They remember their origins, even as they pursue their genocidal purpose. There's tragic irony in this theory. The children created the White Walkers to protect nature from men, yet the others bring only death, a winter where nothing grows. In trying to save the forests, the children may have created the greatest threat the forests ever faced. If the White Walkers were created by the children, it explains their particular enmity toward green seers and the three-eyed raven. They seek to destroy their creators and the magic that both made and might unmake them. The Night King's personal vendetta against the three-eyed raven becomes not random malice, but a targeted attack against the inheritor of the children's magic. This theory also explains why dragonglass can destroy White Walkers. Poetic justice. They can be unmade by the very substance that created them. The magic comes full circle. Perhaps most chilling is the implication for humanity's current struggle. If the others were created from a first man, they are not alien to humanity, but its shadow reflection, what humans become when transformed by ice magic and ancient hatred. The enemy is not some incomprehensible other, but a distorted mirror of humanity itself. Understanding the White Walkers' origins doesn't diminish their threat, it deepens it. They are not mindless ice demons, but the product of a desperate war measure, a living weapon designed specifically to target humans, now acting according to its programming long after its creators sought to stop it. The final confrontation with the White Walkers, then, isn't just a battle for survival, but a reckoning with ancient sins, both the first men's destruction of the forests and the children's creation of an abomination in retaliation. Theory 4. The Last Hero and Azor Ahai. In the darkest days of the long night, when hope had all but faded from the world, legends tell of heroes who brought the dawn. The North remembers the last hero who sought out the children of the forest with his sword, horse, dog, and 12 companions. Across the narrow sea, they sing of Azor Ahai, who forged the flaming sword Lightbringer by plunging it into the heart of his beloved Nissa Nissa. These stories, separated by thousands of miles, may not be different legends at all, but the same hero remembered by different cultures. The similarities are striking. Both legends speak of a devastating darkness that lasted a generation. Both tell of a hero who sacrificed greatly to save humanity. Both connect this hero to a special weapon, the last hero's dragonsteel sword and Azor Ahai's burning Lightbringer. Both place this hero at the pivotal moment when the darkness was finally pushed back, but the variations are telling as well. In Westerosi legend, the last hero's companions died one by one, until he alone reached the children of the forest, whose magic helped defeat the others. In the Eastern faith of R'hllor, Azor Ahai was a champion of fire who stood against darkness. With his burning sword, as Old Nan told Bran, the last hero set out into the Deadlands with a sword, a horse, a dog, and a dozen companions. One by one, cold and hunger and the others claimed them, until only the hero remained. It was then he found the children of the forest, whose magic helped him win the battle for the dawn. The legend of Azor Ahai, as told by Salador Saan to Davos, speaks of a hero who labored for 30 days and nights to forge a hero's sword. Twice he failed, but on the third attempt he knew what he must do. Azor Ahai captured a lion to temper the blade by plunging it through the beast's red heart, but once more the steel shattered and split. His final attempt required the ultimate sacrifice. Nissa Nissa bared her breast, and Azor Ahai thrust the smoking sword through her living heart. These seemingly different stories could be cultural translations of the same events. The Eastern tale emphasizes the forging of Lightbringer, while the Northern tale focuses on the journey to find the children. But both culminate in the same outcome, a hero who pushes back the darkness. The World of Ice and Fire mentions that similar legends exist in many cultures. Hyrkoon the hero, Yntar, Neferian, and Eldric Shadowchaser. These names appear in Yi, Tai, Ashai, the Roinar, and other ancient civilizations, all telling of a great champion who ended the long night. If these are all remembrances of the same hero, it suggests the long night was a global catastrophe. It also implies that this hero traveled far and wide in his quest to end the darkness, or that knowledge of his deeds spread across the known world. The dragon steel sword of the last hero may be the same as Lightbringer. Both weapons were effective against the others, suggesting similar magical properties. The word of ice and fire hints that dragon steel might be Valyrian steel, which we know can kill White Walkers. But Valyria hadn't risen during the long night, so this dragon steel must have been something else. Perhaps a precursor to Valyrian steel, or a blade forged with blood magic, similar to what the Valyrians would later develop. If the last hero and Azor Ahai were one and the same, it creates intriguing possibilities for the prophecy of Azor Ahai's return. The prophecy states, "When the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amid smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone." This could refer to Jon Snow, born amidst the salt of Lyanna's tears and the smoke of war; Daenerys Targaryen, born amidst the salt of the sea around Dragonstone and the smoke of its volcanic vents, later waking dragons from stone eggs, or perhaps both together, ice and fire united against the darkness, as they may have been in the original hero. The duality of this hero, remembered as a champion of ice in the north and fire in the east, mirrors the greater duality that runs throughout Martin's world. Perhaps the original hero united these opposing forces, wielding both the ice magic of the children and the fire magic of what would later become R'hllor's faith. Melisandre's era may have been looking for a single champion when the prophecy might require both aspects, ice and fire, north and south, man and woman, to be fulfilled. Jon and Daenerys together might embody the returned hero better than either could alone. There's even speculation that the last hero, Azor Ahai, might have had Stark and Targaryen blood, foreshadowing Jon Snow's parentage. If the original hero contained both bloodlines, it would explain why both northern and eastern cultures claim him as their own. This theory reframes the coming conflict with the others not as a random magical threat, but as the continuation of an ancient cosmic struggle. The darkness that began with the blood betrayal thousands of years ago is returning to complete what it started. The battle between R'hllor's fire and the Great Other's ice may be the final act in a drama that began with the fall of the great empire of the Dawn. Theory 3. The Children's Curse, creating the first White Walker. When the first men crossed the Arm of Dawn thousands of years ago, they found a Westeros already inhabited. The children of the forest had lived in harmony with the land for countless millennia. What followed was war, the first men with bronze and fire, the children with weirwood and obsidian. This theory posits that in their desperation, the children performed a terrible ritual. They took a captured first man, bound him to a weirwood tree, and drove a dragonglass dagger into his heart. His eyes turned the blue of deep ice, and the first White Walker, perhaps the Night King himself, was born. The evidence for this theory comes from Bran's visions through the weirwood network. Through Greensight, he witnessed this ancient scene. A man bound to a weirwood while a child of the forest, Leaf, drove obsidian into his chest, transforming him into an ice-pale figure with sapphire eyes. When Bran later confronted Leaf about this vision, her response was telling, "We were at war. We were being slaughtered. Our sacred trees were being cut down. We needed to defend ourselves." The children had created the White Walkers as weapons against humanity, a desperate measure by a dying race. Consider what this means. The others were never a natural part of the world. They were a weapon that turned on its creators. a curse born of desperation that grew beyond control. The ritual itself reveals much about the nature of the others. The use of dragonglass, frozen fire, to create creatures of ice is paradoxical, suggesting a complex magical balance. The weirwood tree, as the site of transformation, connects the White Walkers to the old gods and the Greenseer's magic. The White Walkers may be perversions of the very magic that the children used to protect the forests. The timing of this creation aligns with what we know of the historical peace between the first men and the children. After generations of war, they suddenly forged the pact at the Isle of Faces. Why would the children agree to peace when they were losing? Perhaps because they had created a weapon so terrible that it threatened both sides equally. We know the long night came after the pact during the Age of Heroes. This suggests the White Walkers had already broken free of the children's control by then. Having been created to destroy humans, they continued their purpose beyond their creator's intentions. The symbolism in White Walker patterns offers further evidence. The spiral formations they create with corpses mirror the stone formations around. The weirwood where the first White Walker was created. They remember their origins, even as they pursue their genocidal purpose. There's tragic irony in this theory. The children created the White Walkers to protect nature from men. Yet, the others bring only death, a winter where nothing grows. In trying to save the forests, the children may have created the greatest threat the forests ever faced. If the White Walkers were created by the children, it explains their particular enmity toward Greenseers and the three-eyed raven. They seek to destroy their creators and the magic that both made and might unmake them. The Night King's personal vendetta against the three-eyed raven becomes not random malice, but a targeted attack against the inheritor of the children's magic. This theory also explains why dragonglass can destroy White Walkers. Poetic justice. They can be unmade by the very substance that created them. The magic comes full circle. Perhaps most chilling is the implication for humanity's current struggle. If the others were created from a first man, they are not alien to humanity, but its shadow reflection, what humans become when transformed by ice magic and ancient hatred. The enemy is not some incomprehensible other, but a distorted mirror of humanity itself. Understanding the White Walkers' origins doesn't diminish their threat, it deepens it. They are not mindless ice demons, but the product of a desperate war measure. A living weapon designed specifically to target humans, now acting according to its programming long after its creators sought to stop it. The final confrontation with the White Walkers, then, isn't just a battle for survival, but a reckoning with ancient sins, both the first men's destruction of the forests and the children's creation of an abomination in retaliation. Theory 4. The Last Hero and Azor Ahai. In the darkest days of the long night, when hope had all but faded from the world, legends tell of heroes who brought the dawn. The North remembers the last hero, who sought out the children of the forest with his sword, horse, dog, and 12 companions. Across the narrow sea, they sing of Azor Ahai, who forged the flaming sword Lightbringer by plunging it into the heart of his beloved Nissa. These stories, separated by thousands of miles, may not be different legends at all, but the same hero remembered by different cultures. The similarities are striking. Both legends speak of a devastating darkness that lasted a generation. Both tell of a hero who sacrificed greatly to save humanity. Both connect this hero to a special weapon, the last hero's dragonsteel sword and Azor Ahai's burning Lightbringer. Both place this hero at the pivotal moment when the darkness was finally pushed back, but the variations are telling as well. In Westerosi legend, the last hero's companions died one by one, until he alone reached the children of the forest, whose magic helped defeat the others. In the Eastern faith of R'hllor, Azor Ahai was a champion of fire who stood against darkness. With his burning sword, as Old Nan told Bran, the last hero, set out into the Deadlands with a sword, a horse, a dog, and a dozen companions. One by one, cold and hunger and the others claimed them, until only the hero remained. It was then he found the children of the forest, whose magic helped him win the battle for the dawn. The legend of Azor Ahai, as told by Salador Saan to Davos, speaks of a hero who labored for 30 days and nights to forge a hero's sword. Twice he failed, but on the third attempt he knew what he must do. Azor Ahai captured a lion to temper the blade by plunging it through the beast's red heart, but once more the steel shattered and split. His final attempt required the ultimate sacrifice. Nissa Nissa bared her breast, and Azor Ahai thrust the smoking sword through her living heart. These seemingly different stories could be cultural translations of the same events. The Eastern tale emphasizes the forging of Lightbringer, while the Northern tale focuses on the journey to find the children. But both culminate in the same outcome, a hero who pushes back the darkness. The World of Ice and Fire mentions that similar legends exist in many cultures. Hyrkoon the hero, Yntar, Neferian, and Eldric Shadowchaser. These names appear in Yi, Tai, Ashai, the Roinar, and other ancient civilizations, all telling of a great champion who ended the long night. If these are all remembrances of the same hero, it suggests the long night was a global catastrophe. It also implies that this hero traveled far and wide in his quest to end the darkness, or that knowledge of his deeds spread across the known world. The dragon steel sword of the last hero may be the same as Lightbringer. Both weapons were effective against the others, suggesting similar magical properties. The Word of Ice and Fire hints that dragon steel might be Valyrian steel, which we know can kill White Walkers. But Valyria hadn't risen during the long night, so this dragon steel must have been something else. Perhaps a precursor to Valyrian steel, or a blade forged with blood magic, similar to what the Valyrians would later develop. If the last hero and Azor Ahai were one and the same, it creates intriguing possibilities for the prophecy of Azor Ahai's return. The prophecy states, "When the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amidst smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone." This could refer to Jon Snow, born amidst the salt of Lyanna's tears and the smoke of war; Daenerys Targaryen, born amidst the salt of the sea around Dragonstone and the smoke of its volcanic vents, later waking dragons from stone eggs, or perhaps both together, ice and fire united against the darkness, as they may have been in the original hero. The duality of this hero, remembered as a champion of ice in the north and fire in the east, mirrors the greater duality that runs throughout Martin's world. Perhaps the original hero united these opposing forces, wielding both the ice magic of the children and the fire magic of what would later become R'hllor's faith. Melisandre's era may have been looking for a single champion, when the prophecy might require both aspects, ice and fire, north and south, man and woman, to be fulfilled. Jon and Daenerys together might embody the returned hero better than either could alone. There's even speculation that the last hero, Azor Ahai, might have had Stark and Targaryen blood, foreshadowing Jon Snow's parentage. If the original hero contained both bloodlines, it would explain why both northern and eastern cultures claim him as their own. The convergence of these legends across disparate cultures speaks to a universal truth. In the face of existential darkness, humanity needs champions who are willing to sacrifice everything, companions, loved ones, even parts of themselves, to bring back the light. As the White Walkers march south once more, perhaps the world needs not one hero, but many, each embodying different aspects of the original champion who first turned back the night. Theory 5. Dawn, the original Lightbringer. In the Red Mountains of Dawn stands Starfall, ancestral seat of House Dane, and in its halls rests a sword unlike any other in Westeros, Dawn, a pale blade said to be forged from the heart of a fallen star. This theory proposes that Dawn is not merely a unique sword, but the original Lightbringer of legend, the blade that Azor Ahai used to end the Long Night thousands of years ago. Unlike the dark, rippled steel of Valyrian blades, Dawn is described as pale as milk glass, almost luminous. It is as sharp as Valyrian steel, but different in composition and appearance. The Danes do not pass it automatically to the Lord of the House, but only to a worthy warrior deemed the Sword of the Morning. When no worthy wielder exists, Dawn waits in the halls of Starfall. This exceptional treatment suggests Dawn is more than a family heirloom. It is a sacred trust, a weapon of destiny awaiting its proper wielder. The connection between Dawn and Lightbringer becomes clearer when examining their descriptions. Lightbringer in legend glowed with fire and radiated heat. Dawn is said to be pale, but with a subtle glow. The name itself, Dawn, directly references the battle for the dawn that ended the long night. Furthermore, the Dane sigil features a falling star and a sword, direct references to Dawn's celestial origin. This mirrors the prophecy of Azor, Ahai's return, which begins with when the red star bleeds. The falling star that created Dawn could be the original bleeding star of the prophecy. House Dane itself presents another puzzle piece. Despite being Dornish, the Danes often have the silver hair and purple eyes associated with Valyrian bloodlines, yet they predate Valyria's rise. Some theorists suggest they might descend from the great empire of the Dawn, or another ancient civilization with ties to the original Long Night. The title Sword of the Morning carries profound symbolism. The morning brings an end to night, just as the last hero Azor Ahai brought an end to the long night. Each Sword of the Morning then becomes a symbolic heir to the original hero who wielded Dawn against the darkness. Consider the properties of meteoric iron used in Dawn's forging. Such metal contains high amounts of nickel and is extraordinarily hard, suitable for combating White Walkers. The dragon steel, mentioned in ancient texts as effective against the others, might refer not to Valyrian steel, which didn't exist yet, but to Dawn's meteoric metal. Legends say Lightbringer was tempered 3 times, once in water, once in a lion's heart, and finally in the heart of Azor Ahai's beloved. This suggests a blade transformed through blood sacrifice and magic. While we don't know Dawn's forging history, its creation from a fallen star implies a similarly exceptional process. The name Lightbringer itself suggests a sword that emits light, appropriate for a pale milk glass blade that seems to have an inner glow. And Dawn directly references bringing light to darkness, the very purpose of Lightbringer. If Dawn is indeed Lightbringer, why doesn't it burst into flames, as the legends describe? Perhaps the flaming sword was poetic embellishment added over millennia of retellings, or perhaps Dawn's powers remain dormant, awaiting the right circumstances or the right wielder to manifest fully. The last known Sword of the Morning was Sir Arthur Dane, considered the greatest knight of his generation. He died at the Tower of Joy, defending Lyanna Stark and her newborn son, who we now know to be Jon Snow, the union of ice, Stark, and fire, Targaryen. This connection seems too significant to be coincidental. After Arthur's death, Ned Stark returned Dawn to Starfall rather than keeping it as a trophy. This unusual respect suggests he recognized something sacred about the blade, perhaps unconsciously sensing its ancient importance. With Dawn currently without a wielder and the White Walkers marching south, the conditions seem ripe for a new Sword of the Morning to emerge. Could it be Jon Snow, whose parentage connects him to the prophecy of Azor Ahai reborn? Or perhaps Dawn's destiny lies with another character, one who will unexpectedly claim the blade in humanity's darkest hour. If Dawn is indeed Lightbringer, its reappearance in the war against the others would complete a circle thousands of years in the making. The same blade that ended the first long night, returning to end the second. Theory 6. The mystery of Old Towns. Blackstone. At the mouth of the Honeywine in Old Town stands the High Tower, the tallest structure in Westeros. Yet what truly intrigues scholars is not the tower itself, but its foundation, a massive fortress of oily black stone showing no chisel, marks or mortar joints. This fused black base predates even the first men's arrival in Westeros and presents one of the world's greatest architectural mysteries. This theory explores the origin of this strange foundation and similar black stone structures found throughout the world, suggesting they were built by an ancient, possibly non-human civilization that predates all known history. The base of the High Tower on Battle Isle is described as a labyrinthine fortress of fused black stone. Maester Theron, who studied the structure extensively, noted its singularity. The colossal foundation is so large that it can only be a fortress, yet so smooth and curved that it suggests a dragon might have melted stone with dragon flame, as the Maesters tell us the Valyrians did. Yet Valyria's rise came thousands of years after the Blackstone fortress was built. The first men who arrived in Westeros 12,000 years ago found it already ancient. Similar blackstone appears in key locations across the known world. The sea stone chair of the Iron Islands, said to have been found on the shore the city of Ashai, built entirely of black stone that drinks light. The 5 forts of Yitai, massive black stone fortresses along the eastern edge of the known world. The base of the High Tower in Old Town, the ancient mazes of Lorath Yin, a haunted ruined city in Sothorios, which even jungle plants refuse to grow upon. These scattered structures suggest a unified civilization or influence that spanned the globe in an age before recorded history. Several candidates emerge as possible builders of these black stone structures. The site, Deep Ones, mentioned in legend as a sea-dwelling race, half human and half fish, who mated with humans to create the fishy-looking inhabitants of the Iron Islands and Sisterton. Some Meisters believe the Deep Ones built the sea stone chair and possibly the base of the High Tower. Their description echoes Lovecraftian mythology, suggesting an ancient race from the sea depths. The Maze Makers, a vanished race of giants who built the labyrinths of Lorath. Their structures share some similarities with the Blackstone Fortress, particularly in their seemingly impossible engineering. The Great Empire of the Dawn, the ancient civilization centered in Yitai that supposedly preceded the Long Night. They had advanced knowledge and might have spread their influence globally. Before their fall, the Children of the Forest, while not typically associated with stone construction, their magic was powerful. However, the scale of these structures makes children involvement unlikely. A pre-human civilization. Perhaps most disturbing is the possibility that these structures predate not just recorded history, but humanity itself, built by a race that vanished long before the first men or even the children appeared. The composition of the black stone itself raises questions. It's variously described as oily, greasy, fused, and drinking light. These unusual properties suggest it's not natural stone, but something transformed, either through dragonfire, though dragons weren't known to exist then, some other form of extreme heat, or powerful magic now lost to time. Some theorists connect the black stone to the black stone that fell from the sky, worshipped by the Bloodstone Emperor before the Long Night. Could all these structures be built from fragments of an ancient meteorite, one that perhaps brought something alien to the world of ice and fire? The strategic locations of these structures are telling. The High Tower guards the entrance to Old Town and the Citadel. The 5 forts stand at the edge of Yi Ti, supposedly protecting against demons of the Lion of Night. The Sea Stone Chair sits on Pike, commanding the Iron Islands. These aren't random placements, but positions of power and significance. Could these structures have been built as defenses against some ancient threat? Perhaps the others? Or something even older? Their placement might form a global pattern of ward stones or fortresses designed to contain or repel a forgotten enemy. The labyrinthine nature of the Hightower base and the Larathi mazes suggests a purpose beyond mere habitation. Mazes have ritual significance in many cultures, often associated with trapping evil spirits or testing worthiness. Perhaps these structures served a similar magical function, containing power or preventing something from escaping. Tellingly, Old Town, site of the Blackstone Fortress, became the center of knowledge in Westeros, home to the Citadel. Did the Maesters establish themselves there because they sensed the ancient power of the place, or to study the mysterious fortress? The Citadel's skepticism toward magic may be ironic, given their proximity to one of the world's most magical structures. The historical record is suspiciously silent about these black stone structures. Even the oldest Valyrian scrolls make no mention of their builders. This absence suggests either a civilization so ancient that all memory of it was lost, or perhaps a deliberate effort to forget, to erase from history something too disturbing to remember. Whatever built the base of the Hightower left no written records, no artifacts beyond the buildings themselves. They vanished so completely that not even legends remain. Only their indestructible architecture, immune to time and elements, standing as silent testament to a world that existed before the dawn of known history. As the White Walkers march south, once more, these ancient structures may reveal their true purpose. Perhaps they were built as bastions against the long night, fortresses of the dawn that will once again serve as humanity's last defense against the gathering dark. Theory 7. Bran, the Builder's Hand, in Storm's End, the greatest castles of Westeros. Each hold their secrets, but few are as mysterious as Storm's End. With its massive curtain wall, nearly 100 feet thick facing the sea, and its perfect drum tower, Storm's End has withstood the fury of the gods for thousands of years. This theory proposes that its remarkable durability is no accident of engineering, but the result of intervention by Bran the Builder, the legendary Stark who raised the wall, who embedded ancient magic within its stones. The legend of Storm's End begins with Duran Godsgrief, who won the heart of Elenai, daughter of the sea god and goddess of wind. Their wedding night brought disaster as the gods, enraged by the theft of their daughter, sent storms to destroy Duran's keep and kill his wedding guests. Undeterred, Duran declared war on the gods themselves. He built 6 castles, each stronger than the last, and each fell to the divine wrath of storm and sea. It was his 7th attempt, Storm's End as we know it, that finally withstood the tempests. But how did Duran succeed where he had failed 6 times before? The world of ice and fire provides the crucial clue. Some believe that Brandon, the Builder, the legendary founder of House Stark, advised Duran on the construction. This seemingly minor detail opens a world of possibilities. Brandon Stark was no ordinary builder. He raised the wall, a structure imbued with powerful magic, to keep the others at bay. If he helped design Storm's End, he may have applied similar enchantments. The wall, we know, was built with the help of the Children of the Forest and their magic. When Melisandre attempts to use shadow magic at Storm's End, she notes that Storm's End was built thousands of years ago, and there are spells woven into the walls. Dark walls that no shadow can pass. This directly parallels what we know of the wall, which is similarly enchanted against dark magic. Consider the design of Storm's End, a perfectly round drum tower with walls that curve to meet the massive curtain wall facing the sea. This smooth design allows no purchase for wind, causing storms to flow around rather than against it. But the perfection of this design seems beyond the capabilities of the Age of Heroes. How could primitive tools achieve such flawless curves? The answer may lie in the same magic that created the wall, stone shaped not merely by human hands, but by ancient spells. The timing aligns as well. Bran the Builder lived during the Age of Heroes after the Long Night. Having seen the threat of the others firsthand, he may have recognized other supernatural dangers, including the wrath of gods. His journey south to help Durin suggests he saw a broader purpose in securing Westeros against all manner of threats, both ice and storm. Further evidence comes from the similarities between Storm's End and other structures attributed to Brandon. Stark, Winterfell, with its hot springs channeled through the walls, uses natural elements enhanced by design. The Wall, a massive barrier enhanced by spells of protection. Storm's End, with its perfect curves and spell-warded walls, all three structures function not just as physical defenses, but as magical wards against supernatural forces. The connection between the Starks and the Baratheons gains new significance in this light. Robert Baratheon, descendant of Durin Godsgrief, was fostered at the Eyrie alongside Ned Stark, descendant of Bran the Builder. Their friendship echoes the ancient alliance between their ancestors, a partnership that saved Storm's End thousands of years earlier. During Robert's rebellion, Storm's End withstood a year-long siege under Stannis Baratheon's command. Despite starvation that drove the defenders to eat rats and boot leather, the castle itself never came close to falling. The impenetrability of Storm's End during this siege mirrors the wall's defense against wildlings, both structures serving their ancient purpose even millennia after their creation. If Bran the Builder did indeed help design Storm's End, it suggests a more interconnected ancient Westeros than commonly believed. The Starks of the North and the Storm Kings of the South, despite their geographic separation, recognized common threats and shared knowledge to combat them. The First Men may have had a unified approach to supernatural dangers that transcended regional politics. The most compelling aspect of this theory is what it reveals about Bran the Builder himself. He wasn't merely a northern figure concerned only with the Wall and Winterfell, but a continent-wide architect whose work spanned from the frozen north to the storm-racked shores of the Stormlands. His legend may be preserved most strongly in the north, but his influence shaped the entire continent. As the current Bran Stark develops his powers as the three-eyed raven, he may yet rediscover the magical knowledge his namesake used to raise these legendary structures. The ancient spells woven into Storm's End could become crucial once more if the supernatural storms of the Long Night return to Westeros. In this theory, Storm's End stands not just as a testament to human defiance against divine wrath, but as evidence of an ancient magical collaboration between North and South, a united front against forces that threatened all mankind, forged in the aftermath of the Long Night and maintained through the millennia in stone and spell. Theory 8. The Stark ancestor who became the Night's King. In the darkest corners of Northern legend lurks a tale so forbidden that even to speak the name of its protagonist is taboo. Old Nan whispered to Bran Stark of the Night's King, the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who fell in love with a woman with skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. This theory proposes that this fallen Lord Commander was himself a Stark, a dark secret purged from family histories but remembered in whispers and warnings. He was a Stark, the brother of the man who brought him down, Old Nan told Bran. This single line opens a chilling possibility. The Night's King, commander turned traitor, who declared himself king beyond the Wall and practiced dark sacrifices, carried the blood of Winterfell in his veins. The timeline places these events during the Age of Heroes, roughly 8,000 years before current events. According to legend, the Night's King took his corpse bride to the Night Fort, the oldest and largest castle on the wall. There he ruled for 13 terrible years, making sacrifices to the others. It took the combined might of the King of Winter, a Stark, and Joramun, King Beyond the Wall, to defeat him and free the Watch from his influence. After his defeat, all records of the Night's King were destroyed. Thereafter he was forbidden. The tales of the Night's King were forbidden. His very name was forbidden, Sam Tarly tells Jon Snow. This extreme erasure suggests more than ordinary disgrace. It hints at a family shame so profound that even memory of it had to be obliterated. The name most often whispered for this fallen Stark is Brandon, a name that recurs throughout Stark history. Brandon appears in dozens of generations of Starks, including Brandon the Builder, Brandon the Breaker, who may have been the king who defeated the Night's King, and numerous others down to Ned Stark's son, Bran. This repetition of names may not be coincidental but a form of atonement. New Brandons trying to redeem the sin of the original fallen Brandon. Consider the Stark house words. Winter is coming. Most houses choose boastful mottos like, "Hear me roar," or "Ours is the fury." The Stark words are instead a warning, perhaps a reminder of the family's dark secret and the consequences of forgetting it. If a Stark once joined with the others, the family would carry an eternal vigilance against such a fall happening again. The infamous saying, "There must always be a Stark in Winterfell," gains new meaning through this lens. Rather than mere tradition, it might be a magical necessity, a Stark presence needed to maintain ancient wards against the others, wards perhaps established as part of the pact that ended the Night's King's reign. The architecture of Winterfell itself offers clues. Its crypts run deep beneath the castle, with the oldest Stark kings buried in the lowest levels. Yet explorers like Bran note that the crypts seem to continue even deeper, into darkness where no one goes. Could these deepest crypts hold secrets about the Night's King and his reign? Might his body, or something worse, be entombed in those forbidden depths? The direwolf sigil of House Stark connects to this theory as well. Direwolves had not been seen south of the Wall for centuries, until the Stark children found their pups in the first book. The return of direwolves to the Starks coincides with the return of the others beyond the Wall, as if the ancient connection between Starks and the forces of winter is reawakening. Jon Snow's storyline parallels the Night's King in disturbing ways. Like the Night's King, Jon is Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He falls in love with a wildling woman, though Ygritte is very much alive, unlike the Corpse Bride. He even dies and is resurrected, crossing the boundary between life and death. These echoes may foreshadow Jon confronting the legacy of the Night's King, perhaps even learning that his Stark bloodline connects directly to this ancient evil. The Wall itself may be part of the legacy of the Night's King. While legend attributes its construction to Brandon the Builder, some theorists suggest it was built after the Night's King's defeat, not just to keep out the others, but to seal away whatever dark power the Night's King had awakened or joined with. The vision Bran sees through the weirwood of a man being sacrificed to create the first White Walker raises another possibility. Could the Night's King have been that very first other returning centuries later to reclaim his bride? Or perhaps he was a Stark who recognized his kinship with that original transformed ancestor and sought to reunite with his inhuman kin. If a Stark once became the Night's King, it suggests a deep ancient connection between the Starks and the magic of ice. The family that declares winter is coming may have more intimate knowledge of winter's power than anyone suspects. Perhaps the Starks' resistance to cold, noted several times in the books, comes from this ancient mingling with the powers of ice. As the War for the Dawn approaches once more, this forbidden knowledge may prove crucial. The current generation of Starks, particularly Bran with his Greenseer powers, might need to confront this dark chapter in their family history to understand how to defeat the others. the sin that was erased from history, may hold the key to humanity's survival. Theory 9. The Shadowlands, dragons from Asshai. Far to the east, beyond the jade gates of Yitai and the great waste of the Grey, lies Asshai by the Shadow, a city of dark repute where shadowbinders practice their arts beneath the looming mountains of the Shadowlands. This theory challenges the common belief that dragons originated in Valyria, proposing instead that these terrible beasts first emerged from the Shadowlands beyond Asshai, and that the Valyrians merely tamed what they did not create. While Westerosi history credits the Valyrian freehold with the first domestication of dragons, the oldest legends tell a different tale. As the world of ice and fire states, in Asshai, the tales are many and varied. Even the Asshai do not claim to know the truth of when the first dragons came. Some say they were brought to Valyria from the Shadowlands beyond Asshai, but others claim dragons first appeared in the 14 Flames, a ring of volcanoes in the Valyrian Peninsula. This uncertainty in the historical record opens the possibility that Valyria's dragons were imports, not natives. Several pieces of evidence support this theory. Dragon bones have been found in the Shadowlands and on the Isle of Tolos that far predate Valyria's rise to power. These ancient remains suggest dragons existed in the Far East long before the shepherds of Valyria discovered them in the 14 Flames. The Shadowbinders of Asshai practice the darkest forms of magic, including blood magic, similar to what the Valyrians later used to bind dragons to their will. This suggests a common magical tradition that might have originated in Asshai and spread westward. The legendary hero Azor Ahai, closely associated with Asshai and the Lord of Light's religion, is said to have awakened dragons from stone. This legend predates Valyria's rise, placing dragon-taming magic in Asshai's sphere of influence before the Freehold emerged. Daenerys Targaryen's dragon eggs were said to come from the Shadowlands beyond Asshai. When seeking guidance about hatching them, it was to the Shadowbinder Quaithe and other Eastern mystics that she turned, not to Valyrian lore. The name Valyria itself might offer a clue. Some linguists in the fandom have noted its similarity to Valyar, which in bastard Valyrian could mean the ones who domesticated. If so, the Valyrians might have named themselves for their greatest achievement, not discovering dragons, but taming them. Asshai's architecture provides another hint. The city is built entirely of black stone that drinks light, the same mysterious material found at the base of the High Tower in Old Town and in other ancient structures around the world. If this black stone predates human civilization, might it be connected to the primordial origins of dragons as well? The geological conditions of the Shadowlands, with active volcanoes, hot springs and geothermal vents, create an environment similar to the 14 Flames where Valyrian dragons thrived. Such conditions would be ideal for fire-breathing creatures that seem to have an affinity for heat and flame. Consider the trajectory of magical knowledge in this theory. First arising in Asshai and the Shadowlands, then spreading to Valyria. As traders or explorers brought both dragon eggs and the magical knowledge to bond with them, the Valyrians, with their natural affinity for magic, perfected these techniques, creating the blood bonding that made their dragon lords so powerful. After the doom of Valyria, the surviving Targaryens maintained some of this knowledge, but much was lost. When Daenerys sought to hatch her petrified eggs, she instinctively recreated elements of both traditions, the fire and volcanic heat reminiscent of the 14 Flames, and the blood sacrifice central to both Asshai and Valyrian magic. If dragons truly originated in the Shadowlands, it reframes our understanding of Valyria. Rather than being the source of dragon magic, the Valyrians would be its most successful adopters, shepherds who used foreign knowledge to transform themselves into history's greatest empire. This theory also explains why dragons seem to have existed in disparate regions. If they first emerged in the Shadowlands but could survive in any volcanic region, isolated populations might have established themselves wherever conditions were favorable, including the 14 Flames of Valyria. The implications for the current story are significant. If the deepest secrets of dragonkind lie not in the ruins of Valyria, but in the Shadowlands beyond Ashai, characters seeking to understand or control dragons might need to look eastward rather than to the smoking sea that swallowed the freehold. Quaithes, repeated warnings to Daenerys: to go north you must go south, to reach the west you must go east, might be more literal than they appear. Perhaps the key to using dragons against the ice magic of the others lies in the fiery magic of their original homeland, the Shadowlands beyond Ashai. As dragons return to the world and the wall falls, the ancient connection between the far east and the far north, between the shadows of Ashai and the ice of the lands of always winter, may prove crucial to understanding the coming war for Dawn. Dragons may have begun their journey in the uttermost east, but their destiny may lie in the frozen north, where fire meets ice in the final battle. Theory 10. The Doom's Trigger. Faceless Men's Final Gift. Valyria, a civilization of dragon lords. And sorcery, where 14 volcanic peaks crowned an empire that spanned continents. At the height of its power, in a single day of fire and ash, it was no more. The doom came suddenly, mountains exploding, lakes of fire, earthquakes splitting the land, and a great cloud of ash that blotted out the sun. No warning, no survivors, just the smoking ruin of what once was the greatest civilization in history. But what if the doom was not a natural cataclysm, but a calculated act of vengeance? This theory proposes that the Faceless Men, an order of assassins born in the slave mines of Valyria, orchestrated the synchronous deaths of the Freehold's fire mages, triggering the volcanic apocalypse that destroyed their former masters. The evidence begins with the origin of the Faceless Men themselves. According to the kindly man who trains Arya, the first Faceless Man was a slave in the volcanic mines beneath Valyria. Hearing the prayers of fellow slaves to their various gods for deliverance through death, he gave the first gift of mercy, a painless death. In time, the kindly man explains, the first Faceless Man came to know the faces of all the gods, and he realized that they were just different masks worn by the same god, the god of death. Eventually, he gave the gift to the masters as well. This innocuous phrase, "gave the gift to the masters as well," may conceal a far more catastrophic meaning. What if the ultimate gift to the masters wasn't just the death of individuals, but the death of Valyria itself? Archmaester Marwyn's writings, referenced in The World of Ice and Fire, provide a crucial insight. It has been suggested that the Valyrians had used spells to tame the 14 Flames for thousands of years, and that when the spells failed or were interrupted, the cataclysm occurred. What could interrupt the spells of the world's most powerful sorcerers simultaneously? The death of those sorcerers. The Faceless Men had the motive, means, and opportunity for such an act. Motive. Born in the mines where slaves died by the thousands, the Faceless Men would have witnessed the cruelty of Valyrian slavery firsthand. Their philosophy views death as a gift, a release from suffering. What greater suffering existed than the endless toil of slaves beneath the 14 Flames? Means. Their ability to change faces allowed them to infiltrate even the most protected circles. Their poisoncraft was unparalleled. Most importantly, they understood the value of synchronicity, multiple deaths occurring at precisely the same moment. Opportunity. As slaves and servants in Valyrian households, the faceless men would have had access to the dragon lords and fire. Mages who maintained the spells, controlling the 14 flames. Consider the perfect symmetry of this theory. Slaves from the volcanic mines using their master's own magic against them, turning the very mountains that were the source of Valyrian power into instruments of vengeance. The timing of the doom provides another clue. It occurred approximately 100 years after the Faceless Men established their temple in Braavos, the secret city founded by escaped Valyrian slaves. This suggests a long-term plan, carefully orchestrated over generations, to build a power base. In Braavos, while placing agents throughout Valyria, the peculiar nature of the doom, its suddenness and totality, aligns with this theory. Natural disasters rarely destroy an entire civilization without warning. But the simultaneous assassination of key fire mages maintaining the spells that controlled the 14 flames would have created precisely such an instantaneous cataclysm. There's a dark irony in this theory. The Valyrians, who used fire magic to bind dragons to their will and create an empire, were undone by the most basic principle of their own magic, that only death pays for life. The blood magic that powered their spells required sacrifice, and in the end, they became the sacrifice for their own hubris. The Faceless Men's involvement would explain why House Targaryen survived. Aenar Targaryen, heeding his daughter Daenerys's prophetic dream, had removed his family from Valyria years before the doom. As a relatively minor Dragonlord house that had abandoned the heart of the Empire, the Targaryens might have been beneath the notice of the Faceless Men, or perhaps even spared intentionally, as they had demonstrated the wisdom to heed warnings and leave. In the current timeline, this theory casts the Faceless Men in a new light. They are not merely a guild of assassins, but the executioners of the world's greatest civilization, agents of a balancing force that brings down the mighty when they reach too far. Their continued interest in dragons, as evidenced by the infiltration of the citadel by the faceless man known as Pate, suggests they may see the return of dragons under Daenerys as a potential rebirth of Valyrian fire magic that must be monitored or contained. If the Faceless Men indeed destroyed Valyria, it represents perhaps the most consequential assassination in history, not of a single ruler, but of an entire magical ecosystem. The death of Valyria changed the course of world history, allowed the rise of new powers like Braavos and the Seven Kingdoms, and relegated dragons to myth until Daenerys Targaryen walked into fire with 3 petrified eggs. As dragons return to the world, and the threat of the others grows in the north, the ancient fire magic of Valyria may be humanity's best hope. The irony would be complete if the very order that once destroyed this magic to end suffering must now allow its rebirth to prevent an even greater suffering, the endless night of the White Walkers. Theory 11. The Maester's conspiracy against magic. In the quiet halls of the Citadel in Old Town, where thousands of books line shelves that stretch to vaulted ceilings, old men in grey robes forge the chains that mark them as masters. Scholars who advise the lords of Westeros on matters of history, medicine, economics, and countless other disciplines. But beneath their stated mission of preserving and sharing knowledge may lie a darker purpose: the systematic eradication of magic from the world. This theory proposes that for centuries, the Maesters have worked to undermine belief in the supernatural, discredit magical practices, and most significantly, contribute to the extinction of dragons, all in service of creating a world governed by reason rather than magical forces they cannot control. The primary evidence comes from a conversation between Samwell Tarly and Archmaester Marwyn, the mage, in A Feast for Crows, when Sam expresses his intention to tell the Archmaesters about the White Walkers. Marwyn warns him, "Who do you think killed all the dragons the last time around?" gallant dragon slayers armed with swords. The world, the citadel. His building has no place in it for sorcery or prophecy or glass candles, much less for dragons. Marwyn, himself a maverick among the Maesters for his study of the higher mysteries, directly accuses his colleagues of orchestrating the dragon's extinction. As the only Archmaster who bothered to study magic, his perspective carries weight. Consider the historical record. After the dance of the Dragon Civil War, the remaining Targaryen dragons began to sicken and shrink. The last dragon, a stunted, deformed creature, died during the reign of Aegon III, the Dragonbane. Histories attribute this decline to the unnatural conditions of the dragon pit, inbreeding, or simple biological deterioration. But what if these were merely symptoms of deliberate poisoning or sabotage? The Maesters, serving in every noble household, including the Red Keep, would have had unparalleled access to the dragons and their care. A pinch of poison in their food, the wrong herbs in their medicines, or subtle misinformation about their proper keeping could have accelerated their decline. The Citadel's philosophical opposition to magic appears in their teaching. Maesters systematically discount supernatural explanations, preferring rational interpretations of even the most magical-seeming events. They teach that the children of the forest are myths, dragons are mere animals, albeit extraordinary ones, and the long night was simply an astronomical phenomenon rather than a magical apocalypse. This skepticism serves a purpose beyond academic rigor. By discrediting magic, the Maesters undermine potential rivals for influence. In a world where green seers, wargs, pyromancers, and woods witches command real power, what need would lords have for the Council of Maesters? The timing of the Citadel's founding supports this theory. While its exact origin is unclear, the Order rose to prominence after the Andal invasion, when the Faith of the Seven, itself hostile to magical practices associated with the old gods, became dominant in southern Westeros. The alliance between the rational citadel and the dogmatic faith created a powerful force against the magical traditions of the first men and the remaining children of the forest. Further evidence comes from the Maesters' attitude toward Targaryen attempts to hatch new dragons. After the last dragon died, various Targaryens tried to restore their house's greatest weapon. The most notable attempt was the tragedy at Summerhall, where King Aegon V died trying to hatch dragon eggs. Maesters' accounts of these attempts invariably paint them as foolish, dangerous endeavors doomed to fail, discouraging further experimentation. The glass candles mentioned by Marwyn provide another clue. These obsidian artifacts, said to allow communication across vast distances and perhaps even glimpses of the future, were kept at the Citadel, but remained unlit for centuries. When Sam arrives in Old Town, he learns they're suddenly burning again, a sign that magic is returning to the world. The Maesters' inability to control this resurgence represents their greatest fear. Consider also the Citadel's relationship with the Alchemists' Guild. Once a powerful faction whose wildfire was prized by kings, the pyromancers declined precipitously. As the Maesters' influence grew, by Robert's time, they were a shadow of their former selves, until Tyrion employed them to produce wildfire for the Battle of the Blackwater, and their power mysteriously increased as Daenerys' dragons grew. In the east, the geographic placement of the Citadel itself is suggestive. It stands in Old Town, built around the High Tower, itself constructed on that ancient foundation of oily black stone that predates known history. Are the Maesters deliberately positioned at a nexus of ancient power, perhaps to monitor or suppress it? If the Maesters did conspire to rid the world of dragons and magic, they were largely successful until recent events. The birth of Daenerys' dragons, the return of the White Walkers beyond the Wall, the reawakening of green seer powers in Bran Stark, and the mysterious abilities of the Faceless Men all suggest that magic is flooding back into the world. The shade glass candles burn again, and the carefully constructed rationalist order the Meisters built over centuries threatens to collapse. The consequences of this theory for the current storyline are profound. If the Meisters have been working to suppress magic, they may view the War for the Dawn not as a battle for humanity's survival, but as a threat to their worldview. Would they rather see humanity fall to the others than admit the reality of ice? Demons their order has long denied? Or might the crisis force a reformation within the Citadel, led by mavericks like Marwyn, who understand that in the face of magical threats, magical defenses may be necessary? As Sam studies at the Citadel with knowledge of both the White Walkers and Daenerys' dragons, he stands at the crossroads of this ancient conspiracy. The boy who once wanted nothing more than to be a Meister may find himself having to choose between the order he admired and the magical truths he has witnessed with his own eyes. Theory 12. Rhaegar's grand plan at Harrenhal. The year of the false spring, 281 AC. The greatest lords and ladies of the Seven Kingdoms gathered at Harrenhal for the most magnificent tourney ever held. Young Prince Rhaegar Targaryen crowned Lyanna Stark his Queen of Love and Beauty, passing over his own wife and setting in motion events that would lead to Robert's rebellion and the fall of his house. But what if this apparently impulsive romantic gesture was actually part of a carefully orchestrated political plan? This theory proposes that the tourney at Harrenhal was secretly organized by Rhaegar as a cover for a great council of lords to discuss peacefully removing his father, the increasingly unstable King Aerys II, from the Iron Throne. The evidence begins with the tourney's unusual scale and questionable financing. Lord Walter Went, a minor lord, suddenly announced the grandest tourney in living memory, with prizes so lavish they strained credibility. As Barristan Selmy later recalled to Daenerys, Lord Went was as open-handed as he was rich, or so they said, but in hindsight, his lordship's largesse had some help. That help, many believe, was Prince Rhaegar, secretly funding the tourney. Through his Went connections, his close friend Oswell Went of the Kingsguard was Lord Walter's brother. But why would the Crown Prince need such elaborate cover? By 281 AC, King Aerys II had deteriorated from the promising young king who began his reign to a paranoid, cruel ruler who found traitors everywhere. He had not left the Red Keep in years. He burned men alive on flimsy pretexts and grew increasingly erratic in his decisions, threatening the stability of the realm. Rhaegar, as heir apparent, would have felt the responsibility to address this situation, especially as he had begun to recognize his father's unfitness to rule. As Barristan Selmy told Daenerys, your brother Rhaegar was the last dragon, and he was a careful man. His friend Went's tourney was an occasion when all the realm might come together in one place, as if by chance. The key phrase is, as if by chance. Rhaegar needed to gather the great lords without arousing his father's suspicion. A tourney, where such gatherings would be natural, provided the perfect cover for quiet discussions about a regency or forced abdication. Several pieces of evidence support this interpretation. King Aerys initially had no intention of attending the tourney, which would have left Rhaegar free to meet with lords without his father's watchful eye. Only when Lord Varys whispered to Aerys that Prince Rhaegar was using the tourney to court the lords and win support for his plan to unseat his father, did the king decide to attend, bringing his Kingsguard and disrupting whatever plans might have been in motion. The presence of Rhaegar's closest friends and likely conspirators, Sir Arthur Dayne, Sir Oswell Went, and Lord John Connington, all of whom would later demonstrate absolute loyalty to Rhaegar even against the king's wishes. the attendance of lords paramount or their heirs from every region of Westeros, including Rickard Stark, Hoster Tully, Jon Arryn, Tywin Lannister, Mace Tyrell, and Robert Baratheon, exactly the coalition needed to peacefully transition power. The fact that Prince Rhaegar, normally reclusive and bookish, suddenly took center stage at the tourney, defeating all challengers in the joust, perhaps to demonstrate his worthiness as a king to the assembled lords. What then of the crown of blue winter roses placed in Lyanna Stark's lap? If Rhaegar was executing a political plan, this seemingly romantic gesture might have had strategic significance. The North, with its vast territories and independent mindset, would be crucial to any coalition seeking to remove Aerys. By honoring Lyanna, Rhaegar may have been making a calculated gesture toward House Stark, perhaps even laying groundwork for a political marriage alliance once he set aside the Dornish marriage that had failed to produce his prophesied third head of the dragon. Alternatively, the gesture may have been more personal than political, a genuine attraction that complicated Rhaegar's carefully laid plans. Either way, the aftermath derailed whatever designs the prince had for a peaceful transition of power. When Lyanna later disappeared with Rhaegar, her brother and father went to King Aerys for justice, only to be brutally executed. This triggered Robert's rebellion, transforming what might have been a bloodless transition into a devastating civil war. The tragic irony in this theory is that Rhaegar's attempt to prevent chaos by removing his unstable father ended up creating precisely the chaos he feared. His efforts to save the realm from Aerys's madness ultimately destroyed his family's dynasty. If this theory is true, it casts Rhaegar in a more nuanced light, not as a man who abandoned his responsibilities for love, but as a prince trying to balance duty to realm, prophecy, and perhaps personal desire. He sought to be the savior of the Seven Kingdoms twice over, first from his father's madness, then from the darkness he believed was coming. Rhaegar's plans at Harrenhal failed, but their echoes continue to shape the present. Jon Snow's very existence stems from whatever transpired between Rhaegar and Lyanna after the tourney. The fall of the Targaryen dynasty created the political landscape where the War of the Five Kings could erupt. And perhaps most significantly, the destruction of Rhaegar's plans to prepare the realm for coming threats left Westeros fractured and vulnerable, just as the White Walkers begin their march south. In the Game of Thrones, even the best intentions can lead to disaster when plans go awry. Rhaegar's grand design at Harrenhal may have been the most consequential failure in recent Westerosi history, a missed opportunity to stabilize the realm before winter came. Theory 13. The Night of the Laughing Tree, Lyanna's disguise. Among the many mysteries of the tourney at Harrenhal, perhaps none is as intriguing as the identity of the Knight of the Laughing Tree, a mystery knight who appeared for a single day, defeated 3 knights, and vanished before King Aerys could unmask them. This theory proposes that this enigmatic figure was none other than Lyanna Stark, displaying both her exceptional riding skills and her fierce sense of justice. The tale comes to us through Mira Reed, who tells Bran Stark the story of the Knight of the Laughing Tree as part of her father Howland's history. According to her account, a small Cranogman, Howland Reed himself, attended the tourney at Harrenhal. There he was bullied and attacked by 3 squires serving houses Frey, Hay, and Blount. A wolfmaid, clearly Lyanna, defended him and brought him to her brother's camp. The next day, a mystery knight appeared at the tourney. The knight was short of stature, wore mismatched armor cobbled together from different pieces, and bore a shield painted with a laughing weirwood tree. This knight challenged and defeated the 3 knights whose squires had attacked Howland Reed, demanding only that they teach their squires honor as ransom. King Aerys, paranoid as always, became obsessed with unmasking this knight, believing them to be an enemy. But before the knight could be found, they disappeared. Prince Rhaegar was sent to find the mystery knight, but returned with only their shield. Several clues point to Lyanna as the Knight of the Laughing Tree. First, her exceptional riding skills. Ned Stark recalls that his sister rode like a Northman. Lyanna's horsemanship would have been crucial for a smaller person competing against trained knights in the joust. Second, her fierce sense of justice. Lyanna defended Howland Reed from his attackers, showing she was willing to stand up for the wronged. The knight's demands that the defeated knights teach their squires honor aligns perfectly with this character trait. Third, her size. The knight was described as short, matching Lyanna's stature, as a young woman rather than a full-grown man. Fourth, the symbol on the shield, a laughing weirwood tree representing the old gods of the north that the Starks still worshipped. This choice of emblem connects directly to Lyanna's northern heritage. Fifth, the timing of Rhaegar and Lyanna's meeting. Rhaegar was sent to find the knight, but returned only with their shield. This may have been when he first encountered Lyanna, explaining their subsequent connection. If he discovered her identity, he might have been impressed by her courage and chivalry, sparking the attraction that would later lead to their relationship. There's also a symmetry to this theory that fits George R.R. Martin's style of storytelling. Lyanna's son, Jon Snow, would later conceal his identity to join the Night's Watch, just as she concealed hers to join the tourney. Arya Stark, often compared to her aunt Lyanna, similarly disguises herself throughout her journey. This pattern of Stark women and their descendants using disguise to move beyond the constraints placed on them creates a thematic through line in the story. The knight's disappearance makes sense if it was Lyanna. As a highborn lady, she would have faced severe consequences if discovered participating in a tournament. Her brothers may have helped her dispose of the armor and return to her proper place before suspicion fell on her. This theory also adds depth to Robert Baratheon's romanticized view of Lyanna. He remembers her as a beautiful, delicate woman stolen by Rhaegar. But if she was the Knight of the Laughing Tree, Lyanna was far more complex, capable of defending herself and others, skilled enough to defeat trained knights, and brave enough to risk the king's wrath. Most significantly, if Lyanna was the knight, it transforms our understanding of her relationship with Rhaegar. Rather than seeing her as a passive prize that Rhaegar stole, we see their connection beginning with mutual admiration. The Crown Prince discovering and protecting the identity of a young woman brave enough to challenge the social order. Their subsequent relationship becomes less about abduction and more about the meeting of two extraordinary minds who saw in each other something they couldn't find elsewhere. The Laughing Tree shield itself carries symbolic weight. The weirwood represents the old gods and the North's ancient magic. Its laughing face suggests joyful defiance of convention. If Rhaegar kept this shield, as some speculate, it would represent his connection not just to Lyanna personally, but to the northern magical tradition that might be crucial for fulfilling the prophecy he was so obsessed with. This theory also explains why Howland Reed, who was present at the Tower of Joy and is one of the few living characters who knows Jon Snow's true parentage, has remained hidden at Greywater Watch all these years. His loyalty to Lyanna would be even more profound if she had publicly defended his honor at great personal risk. As the series moves toward its conclusion and Jon Snow's heritage becomes increasingly important, the Knight of the Laughing Tree serves as a reminder that his mother was not merely a victim or prize in a dynastic struggle, but a person of exceptional courage and conviction, traits that her son inherited and that may prove crucial in the coming war against the others. In the quiet godswood of Winterfell, before the heart tree with its carved face, Perhaps the truth of the Laughing Tree night still lingers, a memory of Lyanna Stark's brief moment of freedom and justice before the realm descended into the chaos of Robert's rebellion. Theory 14. The Lion with Dragon's Blood. Tyrion's parentage. You are no son of mine. These were Tywin Lannister's final words to Tyrion before the crossbow bolt ended the Great Lord's life. While often dismissed as a cruel rejection from a hateful father, some theorists suggest these words contained a literal truth, that Tyrion Lannister may not be Tywin's biological son, but instead the product of an affair between his mother Joanna and King Aerys II Targaryen. This theory, if true, would make Tyrion a secret Targaryen, a dragon hidden in lion's clothing, and potentially the third head of the dragon prophesied to ride alongside Daenerys and Jon Snow. The evidence begins with the complicated history between House Lannister and House Targaryen, particularly the relationship between Tywin, Joanna, and Aerys. Historical accounts note that Aerys, too, had an inappropriate interest in Joanna Lannister. At Tywin and Joanna's wedding feast, Aerys drank too much and jested about the shameful practice of First Night, suggesting he regretted its abolition as it might have given him the chance to bed Joanna. Later, when Joanna returned to court for the anniversary tourney celebrating Aerys's 10th year on the throne, the king asked if nursing twins had ruined her breasts, causing Tywin to attempt to resign as hand, a resignation Aerys refused. So, timing is suggestive. Joanna was dismissed from her position as companion to Queen Rhaella shortly after the latter's wedding, allegedly because the queen had become jealous of her husband's interest in Joanna. However, Joanna returned to King's Landing on several occasions, including that anniversary tourney in 272 AC, approximately a year before Tyrion's birth in 273 AC. If Aerys did father Tyrion, it would explain Tywin's lifelong hatred of his youngest son. Tywin, who prized his family legacy above all, would have been faced with raising the product of his greatest humiliation, a child that represented both his wife's dishonor, willing or unwilling, and his king's betrayal. Yet he could not openly reject the child without admitting the shame to the world. Tyrion's physical characteristics provide further circumstantial evidence. While not possessing the silver hair and purple eyes of full-blooded Targaryens, he does have hair so blonde it seemed white in certain light, and his eyes are mismatched, one green, Lannister, and one black, possibly representing Targaryen. This combination of features could represent his mixed heritage. More tellingly, Tyrion has always been fascinated by dragons, keeping dragon books from childhood and possessing an encyclopedic knowledge of Targaryen history. When he designs a special saddle for Bran Stark, he says, "I have a tender spot in my heart for cripples, bastards, and broken things," perhaps unconsciously identifying with all three categories, as he might be not just a dwarf, but a secret bastard as well. In the show, Tyrion has a remarkable encounter with Daenerys' dragons in Meereen. He approaches them in their prison, removes their chains, and walks away unharmed. While this scene doesn't occur in the books, it visually suggests a connection between Tyrion and dragonkind that a Lannister shouldn't possess. There are also narrative parallels between Tyrion and other Targaryens. Like many members of that house, he has moments of both brilliance and dark impulses. His wildfire strategy at the Battle of the Blackwater echoes the Targaryen affinity for fire. His dreams sometimes feature dragons. Even his story of being born amidst death, his mother died in childbirth, mirrors the Targaryen saying that the dragon must have 3 heads and the pattern of tragic births in their family. If Tyrion is indeed Aerys' son, it creates a perfect narrative symmetry with Jon Snow. Both would be secret Targaryens raised by different great houses, one in the north and one in the south. Both would have complex relationships with their supposed fathers, and both would embody different aspects of the Targaryen legacy. Jon the ice to Tyrion's wildfire. This theory also recontextualizes Tyrion's relationship with Tywin. The great Lord's dying words, "Wherever whores go," might refer not just to Shae, but to Joanna, if he believed she willingly lay with Aerys. His refusal to ever explicitly acknowledge Tyrion as his son, "You are a Lannister," unfortunately, takes on new meaning if the statement was literally true but politically necessary. For the larger narrative, Tyrion as a Targaryen creates fascinating possibilities for the endgame. The prophecy that the dragon has 3 heads suggests 3 dragon riders will be needed. With Jon and Daenerys accounting for 2, Tyrion could be the 3rd, the unlikeliest dragon rider, yet perhaps the most emotionally resonant. There's tragic irony in this theory as well. If Tyrion is Aerys' son, then he killed his biological father, Aerys, indirectly, by designing the defense of King's Landing that led to the Mad King's death, and his social father, Tywin, directly with a crossbow. This double patricide would weigh heavily on a character who, despite his cynicism, has a deep moral conscience. Tyrion's journey from despised dwarf to Hand of the Queen might ultimately lead to the revelation of his true parentage, a truth that wouldn't change who he is, but would reframe his entire life story. The lion raised among lions might discover he had the blood of the dragon all along, explaining both his differences from his family and his mysterious affinity for the creatures of old Valyria. As with many of these theories, absolute confirmation may never come, but the possibility adds layers of meaning to Tyrion's famous line, "All dwarfs are bastards in their father's eyes." In his case, he might have been both literally and figuratively correct. Theory 15. The Mummer's Dragon, young Aegon's true lineage. In the later books of A Song of Ice and Fire, a young man claiming to be Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Elia Martell, emerges in Essos with the Golden Company at his back. Believed killed as an infant during the sack of King's Landing, this young Aegon, or young Griff, as he initially calls himself, claims he was switched with another baby by Varys, spirited away to safety, and raised in secret to one day reclaim his birthright. But is he truly who he claims to be? This theory suggests he is not the real Aegon Targaryen, but a pretender, specifically a Blackfyre descendant planted by Varys and Illyrio Maupertuis as part of a long-term scheme to place their own candidate on the Iron Throne. In essence, he is the Mummer's Dragon from Daenerys' prophecy, a false dragon controlled by the master mummers Varys and Illyrio. The evidence begins with Daenerys' vision in the House of the Undying, where she sees a cloth dragon swayed on poles amidst a cheering crowd. Quaithe later warns her to beware the Mummer's Dragon, linking this image to deception and false appearances. Varys, who supports young Aegon's claim, was a mummer actor in his youth before becoming a spy master. If Aegon is Varys' dragon, king he has constructed or controls, then he is literally a mummer's dragon. More substantively, young Aegon's sudden appearance raises immediate suspicions. Where has he been for nearly 2 decades? Why has Varys, whose loyalty seemed to be with Daenerys and Viserys, he arranged Dany's marriage to Khal Drogo, suddenly produced a claimant with a better claim than the daughter of the Mad King? The Golden Company's support provides another critical clue. Founded by Bittersteel, a legitimized Targaryen bastard who supported the Blackfyre cause in their rebellions against the Iron Throne, the Golden Company has historically been associated with House Blackfyre. Their words are, "Beneath the gold, the bitter steel," referencing both their founder and their deeper purpose. For a century, they have never broken a contract, yet they break their agreement with Myr to support young Aegon. Why would a company, founded to seat a Blackfyre on the throne, suddenly support a Targaryen? Unless this Targaryen is actually a Blackfyre, Illyrio Maupertuis' involvement deepens the mystery. He goes to extraordinary lengths to support young Aegon, despite having no obvious connection to House Targaryen. However, it's mentioned that his second wife, Serra, had Valyrian features, silver gold hair and blue eyes. Some theorists suggest Serra may have been a female Blackfire descendant, making Illyrio's support of young Aegon personal rather than political. The elaborate education provided to young Aegon is suspicious as well. Trained in languages, history, mathematics, swordplay, and even taught to dye his hair blue to hide his Valyrian features, Aegon has been groomed since childhood to be the perfect prince. This level of preparation suggests not a contingency plan to save a royal baby, but a carefully orchestrated scheme to create an ideal candidate for the throne. Even young Aegon's physical appearance raises questions. While he has the purple eyes, associated with Valyrian bloodlines, his hair is dyed blue, ostensibly to hide its silver-gold color. But we never see his natural hair, leaving room for doubt about whether he truly looks like a Targaryen. The fact that he's initially introduced as young Griff, son of Griff, the exiled Jon Connington, establishes a pattern of hidden identities and false presentations. Jon Connington's involvement lends credibility to Aegon's claim, as the former Hand was a close friend of Rhaegar. But his perspective chapters reveal he never saw the infant Aegon up close, making him unable to confirm whether young Aegon is truly Rhaegar's son. His desperate desire to redeem himself for failing Rhaegar makes him susceptible to believing what he wants to believe. The Blackfire theory also explains why Varys told the dying Kevan Lannister that Aegon would be a better king than Tommen. He has been raising and molding this boy since infancy specifically for the role, regardless of his actual bloodline. If young Aegon is indeed a Blackfire pretender, it adds dramatic irony to his invasion of Westeros. The realm will rally to a supposed Targaryen restoration, unaware they're actually supporting the very line they previously fought multiple wars to keep off the throne. It would make the coming conflict between Aegon and Daenerys not just a battle between aunt and nephew, but between true Targaryen and false. From a narrative perspective, this theory creates a more complex dynamic for the endgame. Rather than a straightforward restoration of House Targaryen through Daenerys and potentially Jon, we have a three-way dance of dragons, each claimant representing different aspects of the Targaryen legacy. Daenerys as the conqueror with actual dragons, Jon as the connection to the north and the prophecy of ice and fire, and young Aegon as the embodiment of the realm's desire for peace and stability after war. The truth of young Aegon's identity may never be definitively proven within the story. DNA testing doesn't exist in Westeros, and those who might have recognized the infant Aegon are dead. But whether he's truly Rhaegar's son or a Blackfire pretender, his arrival in Westeros with the Golden Company will irrevocably change the game of thrones, adding another player whose claim to the Iron Throne cannot be easily dismissed. In a world where identity and bloodline determine destiny, the question of who young Aegon truly is may ultimately matter less than who the realm believes him to be. The mummer's dragon, whether cloth or flesh, will dance as convincingly as a true dragon in the eyes of those desperate to believe. Theory 16. The Valonqar Prophecy, a twist of fate. When Cersei Lannister was a girl, she visited a woods witch called Maggie the Frog, seeking knowledge of her future. Among the prophecies Maggie gave her was this: "When your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you." In High Valyrian, Valonqar means little brother, and this prophecy has haunted Cersei throughout her life, fueling her hatred of Tyrion and her fear of prophecy itself. But what if Cersei's interpretation that Tyrion is the Valonqar who will kill her is wrong? This theory suggests the Valonqar prophecy contains a twist that neither Cersei nor readers initially recognize. The little brother who ends her life may not be her little brother at all. The key lies in the precise wording, the Valonqar rather than your Valonqar. In High Valyrian, this subtle distinction matters. The prophecy doesn't specify whose little brother will kill Cersei, only that a little brother will. Several candidates emerge as possible Valonqars. Jaime Lannister, Cersei's twin brother, born moments after her and technically her little brother. As Cersei's relationship with Jaime deteriorates throughout the story, the possibility grows that he might be the one to end her life. A tragic end to their twisted love. Jaime's character arc has been moving toward redemption, while Cersei descends further into paranoia and cruelty. Their paths diverge more with each book, creating the conditions for a final, fatal confrontation. Tyrion Lannister, the obvious candidate in Cersei's mind. Her lifelong abuse of Tyrion, combined with her false accusation of Joffrey's murder, gives him ample motive. After killing their father, Tyrion has shown he's capable of such an act against family. But is this interpretation too obvious for Martin's style of storytelling? Sandor Clegane, the Hound, little brother to Gregor Clegane, the Mountain. With the Mountain serving as Cersei's champion and protector, any confrontation between the Clegane brothers, the much-anticipated Clegane Bowl, could indirectly lead to Cersei's death if the Hound defeats her protector. Arya Stark, who is not a brother at all, but a younger sibling, a little sister, who has Cersei on her kill list. The prophecy's translation from High Valyrian might contain ambiguities in gender, similar to the prince that was promised prophecy. Alternatively, with her faceless men training, Arya could wear the face of a little brother to fulfill the prophecy, literally while subverting its meaning. Loras Tyrell, little brother to Margaery, who might seek vengeance for his sister's treatment at Cersei's hands. Even Daenerys Targaryen could technically qualify, as she is the younger sibling to Rhaegar and Viserys, though this connection seems more tenuous. The brilliance of this theory lies in how it mirrors Cersei's character flaws. Her obsessive focus on Tyrion as the Valonqar blinds her to other threats, particularly Jaime's growing disillusionment with her. Like Macbeth hearing half a prophecy and creating the conditions for its fulfillment, Cersei's efforts to escape her fate may actually enable it. There's a particular poetic justice if Jaime proves to be the Valonqar. The twins entered the world together. Cersei first, then Jaime holding her foot, and their relationship has defined both their lives. Cersei's refusal to see Jaime as a threat because she considers them two halves of a whole creates a perfect narrative blind spot. The hands about the pale white throat detail adds another layer to the Jaime theory. With his golden hand, Jaime's strangulation of Cersei would be an inversion of the tender embraces they once shared. The gold hand that replaced the one he lost defending Cersei's honor becomes the instrument of her death, a perfect symbol of how their relationship has twisted over time. For the larger narrative, the Valonqar prophecy represents the theme of self-fulfilling prophecy that runs throughout the series. From Cersei's perspective, her actions to prevent the prophecy, her cruelty to Tyrion, her paranoia about Margaery Tyrell, her increasing isolation, create precisely the conditions that could lead to her death at a little brother's hands. The prophecy also connects to the theme of sibling relationships that pervades the story. Jon and Arya, Sansa and Arya, Theon and Asha, Jaime and Tyrion, the Hound and the Mountain. These relationships often define characters more profoundly than romantic or parental bonds. The Valonqar prophecy suggests that in the end, it is the sibling bond, corrupted or betrayed, that will seal Cersei's fate. As the story approaches its conclusion, the Valonqar prophecy looms larger in Cersei's mind. Her increasing isolation, the loss of her children, another part of Maggie's prophecy, and her descent into paranoia and cruelty all create the perfect storm for the prophecy's fulfillment. Whether it comes from Jaime's golden hand, Tyrion's vengeful grip, Arya's disguised attack, or some other little brother entirely, the Valonqar approaches as surely as winter. And in that final moment, when hands close around her throat, Cersei may finally understand the cruel irony of prophecy, that in trying so hard to escape her fate, she has done nothing but race toward it, creating enemies of everyone around her, including those she should have held closest. Theory 17, the Great Northern Conspiracy, the North remembers. The North remembers, Lord Davos. The North remembers, and the Mummer's farce is almost done. With these words to Davos Seaworth, Lord Wyman Manderley hints at what may be one of the most elaborate conspiracies in Westeros, a coordinated effort by Northern lords to overthrow Bolton rule, avenge the Red Wedding, and restore House Stark to power. This theory, often called the Grand Northern Conspiracy, proposes that many northern houses are only feigning loyalty to the Boltons while secretly plotting their downfall and the restoration of a Stark to Winterfell, be it Rickon, Sansa, Arya, or even Jon Snow as the heir named in Robb Stark's will. The evidence begins with the suspicious behavior of several northern lords after the Red Wedding. While they outwardly bend the knee to the Boltons, their actions suggest hidden motives. Lord Wyman Manderley, whose son Wendell died at the Red Wedding, seems to collaborate with the Freys and Boltons. He even executes Davos Seaworth as a gesture of good faith. Yet we later learn this was a ruse. Manderley faked Davos's execution and secretly sent him to retrieve Rickon Stark from Skagos. At Winterfell, Manderley brings massive amounts of food and 3 huge pies, which he serves with peculiar enthusiasm to the Freys and Boltons. He specifically requests the singer to play The Rat Cook, a song about a cook who killed a king's son and fed him to his father, for which he was punished by being turned into a rat who could only eat his young. The implication is clear. Manderley has killed the Freys, who were his guests, and baked them into the pies he serves. Lady Barbary Dustin, despite expressing hatred for Ned Stark, shows Theon the Winterfell crypts and speaks of the Northern Lord's discontent. She tells him, "The North remembers Theon Greyjoy," echoing Manderley's words to Davos. Despite her stated animosity toward House Stark, her actions suggest she may be part of a larger northern plan. The Mountain Clans, when approached by Stannis, declare they will only fight for the Ned's little girl, showing loyalty to the Stark name even above practical considerations of who currently holds power. Robert Glover works with Wyman Manderley to place Stannis in a position to attack the Boltons successfully, coordinating their efforts despite appearing to be on different sides. Most significantly, before his death, Robb Stark created a will that presumably legitimized Jon Snow and named him heir to the North. Witnesses to this document included Mage, Beaumont and Galbar Glover, who were sent to Greywater Watch before the Red Wedding. The fact that they survived and potentially carry Robb's last commands creates a legal basis for Northern Lords to declare for Jon Snow instead of the Boltons. The conspiracy likely centers around several key goals: removing Bolton, Frey, Lannister influence from the North, avenging the Red Wedding, rescuing any surviving Starks, restoring House Stark to Winterfell, potentially declaring Northern independence again. The execution of this conspiracy involves layers of deception. Lords like Manderley and Glover appear to cooperate with the Boltons while secretly undermining them. The Northern Mountain Clans join Stannis not out of loyalty to him, but to liberate the Ned's daughter. Houses with members held hostage by the Freys, like the Umbers, send divided forces, some appearing loyal to the Boltons while others support Stannis. The symbolism of the North's memory appears repeatedly. Manderley's "The North remembers" to Davos, Lady Dustin's same phrase to Theon, The Mountain Clan's declaration they remember the Starks. This shared language suggests coordination rather than coincidence. The conspiracy may also involve Howland Reed, who has remained isolated in Greywater Watch throughout the war, but likely holds crucial information about both Jon Snow's parentage and Robb's will. His strategic position at the neck would allow him to control who enters the north, potentially preventing southern forces from interfering with northern plans. If this theory holds true, it recontextualizes events in the north during a dance. With dragons, the various conflicts and tensions between northern lords at Winterfell under Bolton occupation may be partially theatrical, designed to disguise their coordination while they wait for the right moment to strike. The mysterious murders at Winterfell, attributed to the ghost of Winterfell, might be the work of conspiracy members systematically eliminating Bolton supporters. For the larger narrative, the Grand Northern Conspiracy represents the theme of loyal remembrance that defines the North. Unlike the political shape-shifting common in southern courts, northern houses maintain generational loyalties and grudges. The North remembers is not just a saying, but a fundamental truth about northern character. They do not forget either debts or obligations. As Jon Snow's story progresses, particularly after his predicted resurrection, the existence of Robb's will could provide a legal basis for northern houses to declare for him, regardless of his status as a former Knight's Watch member. This would create a direct conflict between Jon's duty to fight the others and the northern desire to see a Stark restored to Winterfell. The conspiracy's success or failure will likely hinge on whether the scattered northern forces can coordinate effectively before the threat of the others makes political concerns irrelevant. But regardless of outcome, the Grand Northern Conspiracy demonstrates that despite defeat, occupation, and winter, the old words hold true. The North remembers, and winter is coming for House Frey and House Bolton. Theory 18. Summerhall's Tragedy. Niece, Fire and Prophecy. On a summer day in the year 259 AC, the Targaryen summer palace of Summerhall became an inferno. In the flames perished King Aegon Fief Targaryen, his eldest son Duncan the Small, and the legendary knight Sir Duncan the Tall. That same night, amid smoke and sorrow, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was born, a convergence of death and life that would shape the future of Westeros. But what caused this devastating fire? Official histories are suspiciously vague, with damaged or missing pages at crucial moments. This theory proposes that the tragedy at Summerhall was no accident, but the result of King Aegon Fief's deliberate attempt to hatch dragon eggs using wildfire and blood magic, a catastrophic ritual driven by prophecy and desperation. The scant historical record provides our first clues. A damaged page from Archmaester Gildane's history mentions the blood of the dragon, king's blood, fire and blood, dragons come again, before trailing off. These fragments suggest a ritual involving blood sacrifice and fire, classic elements of Valyrian magic. King Aegon Fief's motives would have been compelling. Though he began his reign as a populist king who sought to improve the lot of small folk, he faced increasing resistance from the great lords. Without dragons to enforce his reforms, his power was limited by politics and compromise. The Targaryen strength had been in their dragons, one master wrote. Without them, they were like any other noble house. Restoring dragons to House Targaryen would have given Aegon the power to complete his lifelong mission of helping the common people against the interests of the nobility. Additionally, a woods witch brought to court by Jenny of Oldstones, wife of Prince Duncan, had prophesied that the prince that was promised would be born of the line of Aerys and Rhaella. This prophecy was taken seriously enough that Aegon arranged the marriage of his grandchildren Aerys and Rhaella, despite their lack of affection for each other. If Aegon believed this prophecy, he might have also believed that dragons would be needed for the prince's ultimate purpose, facing the threat from the north that Aegon the Conqueror had foreseen. The presence of key figures at Summerhall is telling. Aegon V was there with his son Prince Duncan, who had given up his claim to the throne to marry Jenny of Oldstones. Sir Duncan the Tall, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and Aegon's lifelong friend, was present. Prince Jaehaerys, Aegon's second son, and his children Aerys and Rhaella were nearby, with Rhaella heavily pregnant with Rhaegar. Rumors suggest that pyromancers from the Alchemists' Guild were also present, along with septons, maesters, and possibly even a blood witch. This gathering of disparate figures, representing different forms of power and knowledge, suggests a major ritual rather than a simple family gathering. What exactly happened at Summerhall remains clouded in mystery, but we can reconstruct a possible sequence of events. King Aegon, perhaps believing he had decoded the secret to hatching dragons, gathered 7 dragon eggs, a number sacred to the faith, at Summerhall. He arranged for wildfire from the pyromancers, possibly believing that normal flame was insufficient to wake dragons from stone. A ritual was prepared, likely involving blood sacrifice, perhaps symbolic, perhaps literal. Something went catastrophically wrong. The wildfire, notoriously unstable, may have ignited prematurely, or perhaps the ritual worked as intended, but the resulting magical backlash consumed the palace in flames. Whatever the specific trigger, Summerhall burned with such intensity that many bodies were never recovered. In the midst of this tragedy, Rhaella Targaryen gave birth to Rhaegar, born in grief, and amid salt and smoke, phrases that would later lead some to believe he might be the prince that was promised. The simultaneous death of the old king and birth of the prince who would become obsessed with prophecy creates a powerful symbolic connection. The aftermath shaped the Seven Kingdoms profoundly. Aegon F's death brought his son Jaehaerys Tut to the throne, who ruled briefly before being succeeded by Aerys II, the mad king whose reign would end in fire and blood. Rhaegar grew up in the shadow of Summerhall, often visiting the ruins to compose melancholy songs on his harp. His obsession with prophecy, likely influenced by the circumstances of his birth, eventually led him to Lyanna Stark and the chain of events that triggered Robert's rebellion. The tragedy's influence extends to the present storyline. Daenerys Targaryen succeeded where her ancestors failed, hatching 3 dragons from stone eggs using a similar combination of fire and blood sacrifice. Her success where Aegon V failed raises questions about what was different in her ritual. Perhaps the magical conditions of the world had changed, or her intuitive approach succeeded where calculated attempts had failed. The parallel between Summerhall and Daenerys' pyre highlights the Targaryen family's cyclical relationship with fire, at times masters of it, at times consumed by it. Fire cannot kill a dragon, Daenerys says, yet fire killed many dragons at Summerhall. This contradiction embodies the dual nature of House Targaryen, capable of greatness and terrible destruction in equal measure. If this theory is correct, the tragedy at Summerhall represents a pivotal moment when the declining Targaryen dynasty attempted to reclaim its former glory through ancient magic, only to accelerate its downfall. The tragedy becomes not just a historical footnote, but a cautionary tale about the dangers of prophecy and the price of power, themes central to George R.R. Martin's entire saga. As Daenerys and Jon Snow, himself born of the Summerhall-influenced union of Rhaegar and Lyanna, move toward their final roles in the story, the shadow of Summerhall looms large, a reminder that in the pursuit of destiny, fire brings both rebirth and destruction, often in the same terrible moment. As we draw our journey through these 18 theories to a close, we find ourselves, not with certainty but with possibility, the lifeblood of any great story. George R.R. Martin's world is not one of simple answers, but of layered meanings, where history becomes legend, legend becomes myth, and truth lingers somewhere between the lines of ancient texts. These theories, whether they prove true or false, within the canonical story, reveal the intricate craftsmanship of Martin's world-building. Each seeming coincidence, each repeated name or symbol, each prophecy half-remembered, all may be threads in a pattern too vast for any single character to perceive. From the highest concerns of prophecy and magic to the intimate betrayals of family and love, these theories span the breadth of human experience. They remind us that in the world of ice and fire, as in our own, the personal and the political, the magical and the mundane, the historical and the immediate are always intertwined. What makes these theories compelling is not merely their potential to predict future plot points, but their ability to deepen our understanding of the story's themes, the cyclical nature of history, the corrupting influence of power, the double-edged sword of prophecy, the strength and danger of family bonds, and the complex interplay between duty and desire. Some of these theories may be confirmed in the coming books or show adaptations. Others may remain forever in the realm of speculation. But in a sense, their veracity is secondary to their value as interpretive tools, frameworks that allow us to engage more deeply with the text and appreciate its nuances. As you drift towards sleep, let these possibilities linger in your mind, like mist over the trident. Consider how the revelation of Jon Snow's parentage changes our understanding of Robert's rebellion, or how the Maester's conspiracy against magic reframes the entire political landscape of Westeros. Wonder whether Tyrion's hand will one day rest on a dragon's scales, or if the crypts beneath Winterfell hide secrets even the Starks have forgotten. In the world beyond the books, Martin continues to weave his tale, and the show adaptations pursue their own interpretations. But tonight, in the realm between wakefulness and dreams, you hold these theories like dragonglass in your palm, sharp, mysterious, and gleaming with possibility. For as old Nan might say, all these theories may be true or none. The night is dark and full of terrors, but also full of wonders waiting to be discovered when the dawn returns. Sleep well, and remember, winter is coming, but spring always follows, and with it perhaps answers to the questions that whisper through the weirwood roots of our imagination.